I'm going to take a very simple case study, very simple case study, and how design patterns can be applied on this simple example. Right? I'm going to show the previous and next, or before and after. I will show you a code with if-else conditions, switch cases, duplicated code, etc. And I'm going to show the equivalent code with better design. And when we come with better design, there's a name for the structure, and then we will see that there's more meaning for that pattern. That's how process we're going to follow. Sounds interesting? Right? So I have already shared the source code online. So you can go to this code/design patterns C#, and this presentation is also already shared. Okay, and you can actually get it from online. I'll be giving the link again. I'll put it in the meetup page, so you can just click it and download it. Right? So let's take a very simple example. All of us know binary trees. Yes, right? So a binary tree in which we have an operator as the root nodes, right? Internal nodes, and constants or as leaf nodes. It could be variable names, it could be constants, etc. And leaf nodes are known as expression trees, right? So we have a simple expression tree here. Now this corresponds to the expression 10 star 20 plus 30. There is no reason for this bracket here. It is not needed because star has higher precedence over plus. Just put it for understanding. So make sure that you understand how this precedence comes from. Because this star 10, 20 will be evaluated first, and after that plus. Make sense? Now we know about post-order traversal. Yes or no? Right? Left, right, and then root. So when you traverse in this tree, how will you get the result here? You go to flash. The left is star, and then left is 10, and the right is 20, and then star 30 and plus. Right? It's very straightforward. Now, here is for something very interesting. We have a compiler front end which actually translates the input code to intermediate code. So this applies on many languages, for example Java, C#, etc. In case of C#, it is CAL, right? What is CAL? Common Intermediate Language, right? And then the VM executes these instructions, right? Now, this is how the execution happens for this particular expression. So we have this 10, this 10, put it in a stack, push 10, push 20, then star. If you have a star, what you have to do?
Multiply.
Pop twice, multiply, push the result back. That will mean 200. Then push
30 in that.
push 30 and then do plus, and the result will be
230.
excellent. Now the .NET teams or Java teams don't like our names. So they have their own names. In case of C#, instead of calling push 10, they call it in a complex name called ldc.i4.s, which is nothing but load constant of 4 bytes, which is signed in value. Right? So it looks very nasty, but it is not. It's a simple, silly thing. It says, hey, come on, give me a constant called 10. This is the answer. Right? Now, are you able to suddenly read bytecodes? Yes or no? So load value 10, load value 20, multiply the values, load the value 30, add the value. In case of Java, we got byte push 10. Byte push stands for byte integer push. So it's a byte integer. It's 1 byte. 10 is 1 byte. So 10, 20, multiply, push 30 and add. Now, this is an essential thing that we had. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to take the simple code, simple silly code, and going to see this. Oops. Is this? So So what I did was, I am just showing you, I'm just showing you the IL disassembler. I'm using I'm using Mac, so I'm using Mono here. So I just compile this code, and this is the bytecode that you get, and you can see that this is not far-fetched. This is actually actual bytecodes that we are talking about. Are you with me so far? Now, what is it to do with design patterns? Right? This is a case study we are going to talk about. This is what the compiler does at a very, very abstract level. Technically, it is not really correct because essentially it doesn't create an expression tree, rather it creates a parse tree or attributed tree, etc., abstract syntax trees, etc. But logically they are trees. Right? So you take the source code, of course, a more complicated source code, you create trees out of it in a very abstract level, so that it can be processed mechanically or programmatically and create intermediate code. Right? This intermediate code is executed by a virtual machine. Why it's called as a virtual machine? Because there is no real machine which actually executes these instructions. So it's called a virtual machine. And we have .NET VM which execute these instructions. Right? Now, what we are going to do is, we are going to look at design patterns which are used in this compiler and the VM part. Right? And again, as I said, it looks very scary example. So I'm going to make it as a very, very simple examples. Right? And you'll be surprised how simple and effective these examples can be. Right? Now, what I'm going to see, first one show is facade pattern. So facade pattern, what it means is, it provides an abstraction over the components that you have in your software. Right? Now, in case of compilers, we have a compiler as a facade. So when I type MCS, Mono C# compiler, in case of Windows, it will be CS, right? C# compiler, right? So that actually is not the compiler. It's actually the compiler driver. The CSC is the name, is called as compiler driver, which actually involves the components internally. The components include scanner, parser, program node builder, and code generator, and it creates a bytecode stream. So it abstracts you away from this implementation details, right? So why do we have to care about this? Now, how does it relate to code? So now let's come back to the code. So I'm going to increase the font size. Facade, and we have a simple code example which shows how the facade works in real code. So what we have here is a stubbed out code. So, logically what happens is, the main will call, of course, after processing the command and arguments, we are getting the input, which is a program, and what we get is a bytecode stream. It's an output, right? So the scanner takes the input, and the builder helps build the nodes, and there's a parser which parses this input, takes the tokens as is needed, and it passes on to the code generator. So I come to this code generator. Maybe there are different kinds of code generators. In this example, we're not really using this code generator. We're using a bytecode code generator. Maybe the name is actually misleading. So you can see how the facade pattern helps you. So in testing, we just talked about testing in the first session, right? So we actually do mocking and stubbing, etc. We can see that this approach effectively works for mocking and stubbing, right? So you can actually write tests only for the parser. You can write tests only for the program node builder. We can write tests only for the program node. We can write tests only for the scanner. We can write tests only for this code generator, etc. So traditionally, this will be written as straight line code, which makes it very, very hard to test because the components will be dependent on each other, right? So now, if I can actually separate out the dependencies, what are the dependencies? So whenever the word dependencies comes into our mind, we immediately think about database as a dependency, or something else as a service as a dependency, right? But other components are also dependencies. Right? So how do I separate these components from each other so that I can test each component separately? Right? That is where facade pattern comes into picture. Now, if I am using facade pattern, I am actually hiding the internal details about the dependencies between these subcomponents. So I can test each of these components separately. Not just testing, even building becomes easier. Now, if I can actually fake the input from scanner and parser, I can focus only on the code generator. Right? Or some one person can write only scanner, another person can work on the parser, and another person can work on the code generator example, etc. Right? That is a benefit of bringing in this pattern, right? In real software. Right? Now, here is how the compiler code gen will work. Now, I'm going. So it's like you're looking at you're coming from the top. It's at 10,000 feet high. You're looking at this whole compiler as a code with multiple components of hazard pattern. Now you're zooming down, maybe to some 100 feet, and looking at something very focused. So we have actually zoomed into the code generator part, a tiny little code generator part only for expressions. Right? So how will the expressions look like? It will take the tree as the input, and how will it process? In this case, we have post-order traversal, yes or no? So we are doing recursive post-order traversal. We have left.gen code and right.gen code and switch of the value of the node. Right? If it happens to be plus, of course we are writing it as console.writeLine just for simplicity. Right? Actually we will be writing it to the bytecode stream. Well, it's on the bytecode stream, right? Stream is nothing but a file, right? And we will be writing it to the stream, but here we are printing it, just printing it for simplicity. So it could be add, sub, mul, div, etc. And this is not implemented. Now, the moment you have conditional code like this is procedural code. This is procedural code, right? In the morning, with the Srinath session, there was one interesting question, right? So how do we test? We have so much conditional complexity, right? There's so many conditions. Now look at this code. How many conditions we have? How many tests will we get from this? I'm just relating to the morning session so that you can relate to the things that we have already covered. Now, the left can be null, right can be null, both can be null, and then we have the switch value. So how many case conditions we have? Well, we have quite a bit of complexity. Right? Now, how do we test? Only for this code. By the way, I'm showing you a simple example, but in real world, this case statement would be of lot of code actually in real world software, the compiler code use, right? So can I test only this? Can I test only this? Right? So you can see the problem with this code, right? Now, how does it look like in the code? So I'm going to the source code here. Of course, as I mentioned, you can actually go through it yourself. Given the source code I have, given the directory. So I have a file called before. So what it does is, I am going to build a tree here, and look at this building. It sucks, right? So as I said, we are going to stub out the details. So we are going to, let's say, focus building only the code generator part, right? So I have to get a tree as input. Yes or no? So I am just building a tree here, right? So that I can build the code generator independently. I'll show you a simple example, right? Now look at this code, it sucks. Very hard to understand. Yes or no? Right? So what we are actually doing is creating an expression called 10 star 20 plus 30 as a tree. That's all. You will revisit this. Now, when I say Gen 4, the control comes here. Right? So based on left or right, I am calling the left of Gen code or right of Gen code. So after that, let's say I go to the value. It could be plus, minus, star or div, and then the operator gets. If it happens to be left and right is null, which means it's a leaf. In a leaf, you get the code for putting the constant. Right? So this example is so good, you can actually see that it's actually working. So it works, right? So you can trust that this code works. Now, what we are going to do is, we are going to break this up into separate classes. Now, there is a process called reification. Reification in object orientation is a process by which you convert these operations into classes. Now, if we create classes for plus, minus, star, div, etc., then what will be the method I will have? Gen code. Are you with me, yes or no? Right? So what will be the base class type? Operation? Yeah, operation or expression node. Right? So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to get the refactored code with this expression node as the base type. Right? So for example, let's take constant. Right? So what will the constant have? Will have the value. Right? And what will the gen code do? Load the constant. Are you with me so far? Right? And what does the expression has? It's an abstract type. It could be interface. Right? And I have gen code as a method. Now, for all the binary expressions, we have a base class called binary expr. So I can call left and right. And then I have class, I have multiply, etc. And now, look at this. How did your code become? Automatically your code got simplified. Your tree generation logic. Yes or no? It's much more readable than before, without you asking for it, right? And now the code, through runtime polymorphism, it works, and the same output is what we get. The same thing, but with better behavior, right? Now, there's some observations we can make here. How many if conditions do you see? How many switch cases did you see? Can you test each of this independently? How dependent they are on each other? You get where I'm coming from? Right? Now, many of us may not be still convinced. My switch case is a sweet switch case statement. I can see switch value and I can see case plus, case minus, case star, case div. I can read it in one single step. You bloated 10 lines of code into 30 lines of code. Right? Bottom line, many of us may not be convinced. Right? You will manage this non-technical person, and if you say that, okay, say I wrote 30 lines of code, you may be happy, but many of us may not be happy, right? So now, let's take a simple example. Instead of actually generating code, what if we want to interpret it? Let's say the expression tree. An expression tree, instead of actually generating code for the expression tree, I want to interpret it. So interpret looks like a complex word. Now, here is what interpret looks like. So I have the bench calculator. I'll use the same expression 10 star 20 plus 30. That's interesting. Very simple example, right? Now, what we're going to do is not use bench calculator, implement bench calculator. You got what I'm talking about? That's the difference. You're going to implement bench calculator. Now, if you want to implement bench calculator, friends, here is the exact same example. That's what expression trees are. Right? So you got an expression tree, and what you want to do? Interpret it. Now, if you look at the classic texts on compilers or any of this, or even in about data structures, you will see this simple silly code. What it says is evaluate and binary expression tree, and if the node is a leaf, then return the node's value. If the node is a binary operator of, then interpret node at left of node at right. Right? This smells of procedural code. I hate if else conditions. My rule is very simple. If your code has if else conditions or switch cases or code duplication, garbage dump. Right? Now,
Question. How does this fit in with the TDD sort of an approach? Maybe you can cover it later.
sure, wonderful, wonderful. How many test cases will I need for this?
1, 2, 3, 4.
3, 4 test cases?
At least.
Yeah. So, 4 test cases you need. So, can I test operator plus independent of other operators? Right? So, friends, I'm going to tell something you will not like it. Right? So, when you come to TDD, most of us ask a simple question: what is my code coverage? Right? Second question you ask is how many tests that you have. The more code coverage you have, the better it is. The more test number of tests you have, that's better. Is it true? Not necessarily. You go back to the switch case example, or go back to this example. Just because I have 4 test cases or 10 cases doesn't mean you are doing better testing or better coding. Friends, if you have one test for one class and you have 100% code coverage for that class, you are much better position. That's why I said you will not like what my answer is. So, TDD, with TD, the more number of test cases, it means your code sucks. Think about it very carefully. You will understand what I am talking about. Just give an example, you can relate to it. The more conditional code we have, the more conditional complexity we have, the more number of tests we need for higher code coverage. What it means is your code sucks, so that's why you need more test cases. The moment you have better design, your number of test cases reduce and your test coverage automatically goes up. Right? So now, this is the word-to-word translation of this code into the written code. So, just 1 minute. Yeah. So I've translated it into the composite pattern. And we have a beautiful interpreter in one page. Now, how many conditions I have? The same logic, same algorithm of if leaf. If leaf, you are not doing anything, but if it is non-leaf, then you are doing evaluating left and right. The same logic, whatever is given, we convert it into an object-oriented design format with runtime polymorphism, and you can see that this works beautifully as well. It's much more readable. Now, can I test them independently? Of course, yes. For example, if you want to test plus, what you need to pass is 2 expressions which has the left and right nodes, and check the result called int. I can test it independently. I have 100% test coverage. If you want to test constant, I can test constant properly, right? And so that's how you can see that this code, this composite pattern helps so much in writing better code, right? Now, I'm going to take a more difficult topic, right? What if you want to generate native code? See, there are only 3 variations possible in compilers. One is where you can actually interpret something and get the result immediately. That's called interpretation. The second thing is compilation to the intermediate code. That's done in Java and .NET. And the third possibility is compared to the native code as done in language like C. So we are talking about the third variation. So we are talking about the native code. How do you generate native code, right? Let's take a simple example. The same simple example. Let's say in case of C, right? This is a simple code I have. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate the assembly code. So I have -s option. CC is the C compiler, and I'm passing expr.c and expr.s. And I'm sorry you may not understand this, right? But I can explain. So what it does is we have the variable temp, right? I'm pushing it into the into the variable list, right? So in the index -4 and in the -8 and -12, 10, 20 and 30. Now I am moving the value 10 to EAX register and moving it, and then multiplying the value 20 with what is in EAX register, which is 10. So what you got is 200, and then you add 200 with the register C, so location C, which is 30, and what you get is plus 30, right? So what you get is 230, and that's what is returned back. This is one example of native code generation. So another example of code generation is for a virtual machine which is a register based, right? Now I don't have the instructions right away, so I'm going to use a Java example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this directory .java. I have the same example written in Java, right? I'm going to generate the code for Android platform. So Android platform is register based. It uses something called Dalvik virtual machine. So most of us have Android phones, right? So when the code is generated, it is generated in the register format. Right? You have virtual registers called V0 to V whatever 65,000 so on. Right? This is a simple example. I did this, there's a function called to avoid constant folding. The process called constant folding. So I'm compiling this, and I'm creating the DEX output, and I'm dumping the DEX result. And you see something here which may not be immediately recognizable, but once I explain it, it will become obvious to you. So to show the steps, this is actual code, right? This is Android code. So you have A star B plus C and constant 60, that is 2 bytes. Take the value 10 and put it into V1. Take the value 20, put it into V2. Take the value 30, put it into V3. Are you with me so far? And then multiply the integers V1 and V2 and put it into V0. And add the integers V0 and V3 and return the value V0. The target is the first register. So you have source and target registers. This is the source register, this is the target register. This is interesting, right? What does it take to generate this code? It looks very complicated. Yes or no? Right? You have to create a register allocator which can allocate registers for you, and then you have to remember what is the source register, what is the target register, and then generate this code. Yes or no? What if I say that you can do it in 10 minutes or more? That's awesome, right? Let's see this. So what we have here is this. What did I do? So what I have here is actually a register allocator. First we have an abstraction of it. This is what I am talking about as 10 or 12 lines of code. So we have a very simple thing as a concept called register. It's an object, right? An abstraction. So we have a register. What is a register? Register has an index. That's all register is. We have register indexes from V0 to V60,000 whatever it is, right? So register has an index. So I am having this abstraction called index, and I can create a register, right? How do you get a register? As per it, you get it, right? And I can get a register index if I need, right? So I have a get index. And this simple register allocator, which looks very complicated when you talk about the code, right? Look at what it does. The register index 0, and it asks for the next register unavailable, it gives the next index plus plus, right? So what you need to extend is actually called release register, which I'm not talking about, because once you use a register, you have to release it, right? It will make the code complicated for now. For understanding, I'm making it very simple, extremely simple for us to understand, right? So this is a simple code that we have. Now how does a real code look like? Now we have a constant. Now, how does a constant work? For the code generation of constant, I say register allocator dot get next register. Let's say I have only 10, that's my tree. And the constant dot get gen code will get called. Now what will I get now here? What will target register? V0. This I'm calling it for the first time, right? Index, the index will be 0. So I am getting the index 0 here, and I am getting the output constant slash 16 because it's an integer value. Constant is the integer constant. And move the value, whatever you have in this value here, to the register V0 or Vx. We don't know what the index is, right? And this is very important. We are returning the register as a return value. Register as an object. Why this is important is because when you have an expression tree left and right, you don't know what is you are getting from the left. You don't know what is you are getting from the right. Right? What I need is what was the register for this particular left expression, or what is the register for the right expression. Take that and combine them together if needed. Right? This becomes very evident when you have the plus operator. Now, what is the plus operator? The plus operator says I get the gen code of the first register, the left register, and I am getting the register for the right expression. And what is the target register? Ask our friend, register allocator, he will give the target register count, right? And now I can generate the code for that. And what is the beauty of this? You can extend this for any number of operators, right? Now this is the code that we have. Did I compile the right one? Oh, sorry, I compiled the wrong one. Isn't this awesome? You can give any damn complex expression and still your register allocator will work. Right? Because conceptually your composite pattern has made your life so simple. You don't have to care. What you have to care is, am I getting the index from the left expression? Am I getting the right index from the right expression? Combine them together. That's what we are doing here. Right? In other words, the same thing. So if you tweak this little bit, we can get the native code generation for your x86 machine. The one that would scan for us, right? Percentage AX and stuff like that, right? Because this logic, this programming logic that we can apply here, right? Now let's come back here. Let's take the problem. We are still not happy with this expression creation. Are we happy? Not really, right? So whenever we have this constructor calls, we immediately say use factory method pattern. Right? So we have to think why, how, when, etc. That's the purpose of the session itself, right? To understand when and where do we apply this. Okay, let's try using factory method pattern. Let's see what happens, right? So we have factory method slash before slash compare. Now this is what I have as a existing one. We readily have. What we are going to do is, what happens if we use a factory method? This is what it happens. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the usage example, usage part. Addition dot make. Did anything improve? A smell is a smell is a smell. Can we call it different names? Right? You cannot fix one smell with another smell and call it as a fix or refactoring, right? So, what is the purpose what we had? For simplifying the creation. And did we simplified it? No. But when you do this, you realize something. Oh, okay. Let's say this is the expression I am using. Let's say 10 star 20 plus 10. I can end up using the same constants again and again. So, I don't have to recreate those nodes. Right? So, whenever I am using this, I am recreating the nodes. Even here I am recreating the nodes. Perhaps I don't have to recreate them. I can reuse them. Right? I can reuse this because they are immutable objects. I am not going to change the nodes again. So, I can reuse them. Right? So how do we reuse them? It's very straightforward, right? You have a table, you put the values and the objects. If the value is already there, you return it, otherwise you put it there. Are you with me? So this is what we have done. So this is what we have done here. So we have the value is constant. So if the key what I'm looking for example 10, if it already exists in the pool, you return it. Sorry, we create this and put it in the pool, otherwise return it. The before and after? Yeah, okay. So this is the original code. Maybe I'll take this code. And this is the original code. Right? So the only thing we have changed is that we cached it. Right? So now the functionality didn't change. The only thing, we have just optimized a little bit of functionality. And there's a name for this structure, this is called flywheel pattern. Right? So if you talk about flywheel pattern, it looks like the word itself looks scary. Right? But look at the use. It's very straightforward. When do we use this? Whenever you have immutable objects that doesn't change, instead of actually creating them again and again, I can reuse it. But why cannot use the constructor? The moment you put the constructor, a new object is always written back. Right? So I have to control the object creation. So what's the easiest way to control object creation? Put a factory method. The moment you put a factory method, I can control object creation and reuse things. Right? So this another example is actually a singleton. Right? Where I want to make sure only one object exists. Right? In that case, I can reuse that only one object and that will become so the factor method enables it, right?
Pattern is like very good, but one of the problems that we always face is that when we use too many patterns, I wouldn't use the word too many, but if we break down the code into known patterns, one of the things that comes up visible here is that the other principles around it, for example solid principle. So if I see that as a pattern this achieves what I want to, it is like I am reusing the, basically I am making a good use of the memory here. But if I see the responsibility of a constant class, then it is doing something more than what it, what the name conveys it to me. So how do we how do we see it as like, meaning do we still want to follow SRP here, I mean single responsibility, or are we okay with that violation here, meaning do we have to weigh the pros and cons?
Excellent, yeah. So we have a topic for it?
Yeah.
So very nice question actually. So his question is, aren't we overloading this poor constant class? Simple and silly and now it's becoming complicated, right? So the answer is, we are the part of the journey, we are not yet done it. The answer is in the next part, which is said that, oh my goodness, this is too much, let's break this up. So now it's in the journey, right? As you can see, right, we are starting with a simple example and taking scenarios and improving further. So what is the scenario? Right? To answer your question, let's come back here. Are we happy with this creation yet? No, it sucks. Right? So now let's take this and how is this? How is this? Is it readable? Right? So this is something we heard in the morning.
Method chaining. Method chaining.
Fluid interface. Yeah. So fluid interfaces. We are using fluid interfaces here and we are using builder pattern here. In other words, we simplify the object creation. and move the responsibility to the builder pattern. So actually this logic actually now can move to the const here. I am actually still reusing it here to the sake of showing how the before and after works, right? So there's another interesting question in the morning. So in other words, we actually follow the principles, but step by step, not necessarily immediately all one stretch, right? That's to answer your question. The next question one of you asked, why do we need this extra one class called builder? One of you asked very interesting. I think you asked this question, right? I'm not sure. So why do we need this extra builder class? Yes or no? We have this question, right? Now if you look at this, it's actually, in a way it's beautiful now. The responsibility of the creation of the object is now moved to the builder class. Okay, I think, yeah, it's time. Maybe it takes 5 more minutes, right? Yeah, so your question is, the builder will become heavy with
If I make all the properties a method and I put them in the builder class, wouldn't the load of that class become too big?
Excellent question. So, the question is, how many of you have seen a constructor calling another overloaded constructor? How many of you seen a constructor with 5 or 6 parameters? All of us. How many of you written an overloaded constructor with 4 arguments, 5 arguments, 6 arguments, 7 arguments, and call from 4 argument constructor, call the 7 argument constructor, pass the default values? All of us done since, right? Now think about it, your code has become bloated. Right? With all the default parameters, your code got bloated. Right? That's the first problem. Second problem is, how do you validate this whole stuff? Let me take a very simple example. Let's say you have date time. What are the values that we have? Day, month, year, and time seconds, minutes, hours, time zone. How many we have? 7 arguments we have. Now, is it always I want all these arguments? I only want date. What will I do? Date time and put 3 values. What will I do? Call the constructor with 7 arguments and pass the default values. Are you with me? Right? Then what is the next constructor I write? Date time with only time and call the constructor the other default values. 2 constructors. 3 constructors totally. What's another constructor? Date, time value, and pass the default time zone. 4th constructor. What's 5th constructor? Set only the time zone and get the default value. What is 6th constructor? The default constructor we need know. Is it really needed? All this complexity? Now, this is the first complexity. Second complexity is how do you validate the values? You put set day value is 29. The month is February. Right? And the year is 2008 or 2000. Now where will you put the conditional checks? In the original constructor. Right? How many conditional checks you will have? Right? So what's the conditional complexity now? You getting what I'm coming to? So you are moving all this complexity away from that to each method in the builder class. So for example, set day or set month, we can actually check for the validity and you can write the unit test only for that. So it's much more than what appears to be in the builder class. So this is another example we saw in the morning, right? So one of the another someone saw is Anand's example. I just grabbed this, right? You can see how beautifully the builder pattern is used here. Oh, yeah. Right? Internally, you can reuse any of this. Now, how it is actually creating internally, right? And it reads very nice. The fluent interface is there. Right? So, I have more things to cover. So maybe I'll just mention what was my plan to cover. So this how we can actually go ahead with using factory methods, private pattern, builders. How to use iterators, we can use yield, how to use Vista pattern, how to use strategy pattern, how an interpreter may look, and how you can actually use command pattern, and so on. So this you can go through it yourself. You have the idea flow now, so you can actually understand it yourself. So with that, I think I'm eating your time now. So let's break for the lunch and continue our lunch. Any questions? Maybe you have time, sir?
Share the slides.
The slides already shared. So I have shared this in this location and put it in the meetup link as well. Yep. This is how it is shared. The source code is available here. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is design patterns are very valid even today. Like in the morning, in the context of test automation, we talked about design patterns. You didn't expect at all that we will talk about it. In the context of what? Accessing your APIs. We talked about builder pattern. So builder pattern, so patterns are still relevant in this today's world. And and also you need to go deeper to understand these patterns and when and where to use it, right? Talking theory doesn't help you. But when you look at the actual specific examples and how it actually simplifies your code, how it makes your code more readable, and how it makes your code more testable, you will realize that you can make your life much better and great.
If we want to learn more, are you doing anything elsewhere, a training or something more detailed?
Yeah, so we do design patterns trainings. So thanks for the question. So we do design pattern trainings, architecture trainings, etc. So if you're interested, drop us a mail and we'll be happy to take it. So, any other questions?
Very generic question because we have gone through composite pattern here.
Yeah.
I have always read in books and I have seen many people saying that it is always good to use composite over inheritance. So if I have to choose between the two. So yeah, sometimes I see that it is useful, but somewhere I am not convinced that it is always it is always better to use composite over inheritance. Can you give some inputs on that? Why is it a big statement made always?
Sure. So I think this is one of the most misunderstood aspect of patterns. So if you look at any of these patterns, so his question is about composition versus inheritance. Okay, so let me give a very practical answer. Now let us look at the 9 patterns we discussed now. Okay, now let's have a counting exercise, very small counting exercise. Right now, do we have inheritance here? We do have in code generator. Stream one pattern, one inheritance. Inheritance, composite, yes. Now this is the so do you see inheritance in factory method? It is there actually. This is concrete product, inheritance product. Right? Third pattern, third is of inheritance. This is flyweight. We have inheritance. Builder pattern, inheritance. Iterator, inheritance. Strategy. Yes. Visitor. Yes. So you can say yes for all other patterns. Okay. Now, to come back to your question, in design patterns, one of the principles, what it says is prefer composition over inheritance. That's why I said it's most misunderstood principle. Right? You will see that inheritance is used extensively in design patterns. Why? Because it's all about runtime polymorphism. In all the examples we saw, if you think about it, just take a step back, what we did is, we applied runtime dispatch, that's all. What are you doing in removing the switch case? We converted it to a composite pattern, now we can use gen code as a virtual method. In other words, the runtime polymorphism is the essence of object orientation. How it is used in design patterns is, it combines with composition. Instead of using pure inheritance, it combines with composition, right? So whenever we use object orientation, think about how we can use composition and inheritance together instead of pure inheritance. Otherwise, you have inheritance hierarchies everywhere. That is the real meaning of prefer composition over inheritance. This is one of the most misunderstood principles.
I know that these are well much before. So if you look at composition, if you see the composition example, it is most likely you see the hard-coded classes also. But nowadays, when I'm using some class inside my another class, I'm not hard-coding it. I'm not creating a composite object inside my class.
So composite is different from composition. It is composite pattern. Composite pattern is different from composition. Object composition means having elements inside another class. That's not composition. Composite means a derived class has objects of its base. Right? And a virtual method is done so that the aggregation and leaf, right? Aggregate composite objects and leaf objects need not be differentiated separately. That's composition. I think we should not mix up the composite and composition. So we have time for another question or we'll close?
How hungry are you guys?
Yes.
You want to?
Sir, one general question. Sir, what is the difference between these patterns and principles?
Excellent. So,
Okay. Sure.
Sir, is a principle is a part of pattern?
okay. So let me give it as a simple example, right? So, honesty is a principle. Honesty is a principle, right? Stealing everywhere is a pattern. Abstraction is a principle. Encapsulation is a principle, right? And strategy is a pattern. So, it is encapsulating a variation. So, in other words, patterns are nothing but application of principles. So, patterns are specific instances of applications of principles. Shoplifting is one pattern.
When
Right? Pickpocketing is another pattern.
I will give this to you for this answer.
That was nice. So maybe it's lunchtime, so we'll break for lunch.
Ganesh is here for some more time. Are you here for lunch?
No, I have lunch and then
Yes,
leave.
so he is here during lunch, so you can still talk to him. Lunch is ready here. This time I want to thank